Yes, Scrafters. It's half term. I'm back with some Scraft. The replays have been coming in over the last couple of days. They're coming in thick and fast. So I'm going to try and get a match done here. Hopefully maybe another match over the weekend. I think I'll probably have to send a couple over to Data as well. I'm keen to get his input on a couple of these games too. So yeah, there should be quite a few games coming up on the channel. This is Legion versus TigerLion. We're on Babylon. Let's get it going. Legion, Fallen Legion up in the top left as our Protoss player. TigerLion also playing Protoss in the bottom right. And I like PvP. I think there's a lot of variety in PvP. You don't know what you're going to get in a Protoss v Protoss. Mirror matchups can sometimes get a bit bogged down because both players feel if they don't follow a particular build, especially like Zerg versus Zerg for a long time had a real problem with both players just feeling if they didn't go roaches, they would lose to roaches. So in Zerg versus Zerg, just everybody had roughly the same build. You pushed out some lings and there was a bit of a ling exchange, and the ling back and forth went on until both players started to get roaches up. And obviously roaches are, roaches beat lings pretty hard. So then there would just be a massive roach standoff, and it got, it's really hard for the players to move on then from roaches, because as soon as you stop building roaches, your opponent's got more roaches than you and you die to their roaches. But if you don't stop building roaches, you're stuck on roaches and your opponent's got roaches and nobody can win. PvP's never really had that issue. It's always had a little bit more variety. Arguably, the one thing it has had that's maybe a little bit similar to that is for a long time, Protoss players would go Phoenix against another Protoss, and if both players went Phoenix, it turned ugly, because Phoenix is a real numbers game. If you have more Phoenix than your opponent, you win that fight. So you'd get like both players would have, because if both players know what they're doing, they have roughly exactly the same number of Phoenix at the same time, and so you'd get these weird Phoenix battles where like each player's Phoenix fleet would kill the other ones, and one player would end up with one Phoenix. It's just weird. But apart from that, anyway, that's not what's happening in this game. There's double photon cannon at the front door here. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't like it. I don't like a double photon cannon at the front door. I'll tell you for why. A single photon cannon, not sure about that location. A single photon cannon at the front door, I don't mind. Can keep out a nosy scout, can get rid of an observer that might come and fly in and try and see what's at the top of your ramp, etc. It's not a terrible thing, can prevent a DT walking in. All of those types of good things. Two, what does the second one add? Nothing really. If an army turns up, photon cannons are not going to hold it. They're just not. They're not that good, And if some like light harass unit or scout turns up, well, one photon cannon's going to do it. So I'd rather this other photon cannon was a stalker, to be honest. Anyway, other side of the map, we've also got double photon cannon. No, it's not a complete wall off. That's okay. So Fallen Legion with the shield battery as well, and shield batteries are great things. Oh, actually, they both have got a shield battery in the mix. So yeah, let's try and see, what is this, like 2-base carrier? You've only got 3 workers in your natural, but you're building carriers. I don't know, you guys like, yeah, which it's EMS League, it's fine. This dies so hard on on the ladder or whatever, because look, you're 7 minutes deep, and what have you got? 2 stalkers, 2 zealots, and 1 carrier. You just get smashed in half with any sort of pressure turning up. You just die. If you rush the carriers, you're just so flimsy in the early game because you've just got nothing. Really, building carriers is a late game strat. It's for when you've got all the money in the world and you can pump out carriers several at a time to accompany an army. No, there's just 3 stargates here, building Tempest and Carrier. So we'll see how this goes. TigerLion is queuing up Void Rays, and Void Rays can can trade quite well against carriers, believe it or not. With the prismatic alignment, with prismatic alignment or whatever, get them involved and make sure you're focusing the actual carriers. If you leave them to their own devices, they will die hard to carriers, like most things do, to be honest, because the way carriers work, they send out the interceptors, and yes, TigerLion needs to pull back so he's within range of this shield battery. The Zealots, unfortunately, they're not going to really add much to this fight. So you don't want to fight down here, TigerLion, and your Zealots, send them across the map, because they're what are they doing underneath carriers? Nothing. They're just dancing around and dying. Oh no, don't let all the Zealots die. That's so expensive. That's a couple of thousand minerals worth of Zealot. Maybe not. It's not far off, is it? So yeah, I think this is actually just GG. There's just nothing here that shoots up. Now the warp gates are idle, and you could get some stalkers in, but 3 stalkers will not beat 3 carriers. And these are never going to see the light of day, surely. If you're Legion, you just shut this down. You just kill this. So yeah, there's just nothing even in production that can fight these. There's one Void Ray. I don't know why we're not warping in Stalkers, because, okay, the first round of Stalkers won't do it, but the second would. Part of the issue that actually both of these players have got, well, Legion has got 3 Stargates, to be fair. But look, TigerLion, you've got 2,000 minerals in the bank, but there's only 3 warp gates here. If you had like 7 warp gates, 7 Stalkers, with a shield battery, we'll focus on a carrier. You'll get one when there's this few of them. And, certainly if 2 warp-in rounds, chronoing them in between, 14 Stalkers, and you could probably hold. Useful things to note are that because of the way carriers do damage, they send out these interceptors, and the interceptors fly around. If you leave your units to their own devices, they will shoot the interceptors, and interceptors are so fast that they tend to not really die, and there's so many of them. Even when they do die, the carrier rebuilds them. They build pretty quickly. You don't want to shoot the interceptors, is the short story. You need to be focusing the carriers. When the carrier pops, all the interceptors are gone and they're not being rebuilt anymore. So the really frustrating thing about Protoss carriers is the player with the carriers, their micro involves click, click. If you're the player playing against it, your micro involves constantly having to retarget, constantly retargeting to focus on the weakest carrier, and that's really annoying because it makes the exchange feel really uneven. So generally when it's a handful of carriers like this, useful things to note are that blink stalkers can blink directly underneath them, and you just blink in and you right click a carrier, then click the next one, and so on. But the problem is the DPS from carriers is high. If you're Terran, stim Marines, you stim underneath the carriers, you right click them, and they do pop out of the sky pretty quickly. Vikings are very good against them. Tempests are very good against them. As I mentioned, Void Rays can be good, but focus fire is the key. You've got to be focusing the carriers, and that can be all right. The DPS from the carriers is high, and it's a bit like Marine DPS. So if you're the carrier player, you want +1 attack. If you're the defending player, you want +1 armor, because the interceptors do small amounts of damage rapidly, lots, like over and over again. So armor is good against that. The other thing really good against that as a Protoss, sentries. If you've got a sentry, you pop a guardian shield. It makes a big difference to the longevity of your units when you're under carrier fire. Quite a big, a noticeable difference. So, a couple of sentries in your army, and when the carriers show up, you pop that guardian shield. Really does help to keep your stalkers alive for a bit longer, so that you can get the, if you think of the way stalkers shoot, it's like burst, burst, burst. Keeping them alive a little bit longer can really tip the balance between, once you lose, sometimes you lose 1 stalker, and that's the difference between 5 bursts killing a thing and 6, and that extra burst costs you another stalker, and before you know it, you're in deep trouble. So things like guardian shield, pretty good against those carriers. Anyway, it is FallenLegion that takes that first game. GG.